Eliza Marrow stood on the church steps in a borrowed veil, shaking so hard the lace trembled against her mouth, while the man who had sent for a bride refused to take her. Dust clung to her hem, hunger hollowed her cheeks, and the whole town watched as if shame were a show sold with coffee and nails. She kept one small leather satchel locked beneath her arm, the only thing left from the life she had been ordered never to name. Then Caleb Wren, a lonely rancher with frost in his beard and grief in his eyes, staggered from his wagon, clutching his bleeding side, and Eliza's hidden hands knew exactly how to save him. Before we open the door to this dusty town, tell me your country in the comments. Subscribe if you love Western romances about public shame, unexpected rescue, and hearts that finally come home. By noon, every face in Mercy Crossing had turned toward Eliza Marrow, and none of those faces held mercy. She stood before the whitewashed church, with a veil pinned crookedly over brown hair that had not been brushed properly since dawn. The dress she wore was not truly a wedding dress. It had belonged to a woman named Mrs. Harlan, who was too broad in the shoulders and too short in the skirt, so the hem showed Eliza's scuffed boots, and the sleeves pinched when she moved. She had mended the lace herself on the train, stitch by stitch, while men smoked in the aisle and children stared at the bruised yellow shadows under her eyes. A bell rope creaked above the church door, though no one had rung it. Prairie wind did the ringing, pushing the bell just enough to make a lonely metal complaint. Beside the hitching rail stood Silas Bell, the storekeeper's nephew, the man whose letter had brought her 300 miles west. He was dressed in a black coat that looked new enough to make him proud and tight enough to make him mean. He held Eliza's own letter in one hand as if it were evidence before a judge. "I did not ask for this," Silas said. The town murmured. Eliza could smell flour dust from the mercantile, horse sweat, and coffee from the cafe across the street. She had not eaten since the day before. She pressed one hand around the leather satchel tucked beneath her arm, feeling the shape of wrapped instruments inside, and wished she could disappear into the dust moving along the road. "You wrote to a bride agency," Reverend Cole said quietly. "I wrote for a respectable woman," Silas snapped. "Not a charity case too pale to stand in a stiff wind." A few women lowered their eyes. Most did not. Eliza had learned the cruelty of eyes long before Mercy Crossing. Eyes could weigh a woman's worth faster than any scale. They measured cloth, posture, accent, tremor, silence. They decided whether a woman had come with money or trouble. Eliza had arrived with neither money nor defense, and trouble had followed her like a shadow. "I can work," she said, her voice barely carrying. "I can sew. I can keep house. I can." Silas laughed once, sharp as a tin cup striking stone. "You can shake." That brought the first open chuckle. It came from two cattle hands leaning outside the livery, then another from a boy too young to understand shame, but old enough to repeat it. Eliza's fingers trembled harder. She clenched them into the satchel strap. The agency woman in Topeka had warned her, "Do not mention the hospital. Do not mention the doctor. Do not mention the charges. Men want wives, not questions. A quiet past is better than an honest one." So Eliza had let the world call her a seamstress, a widow's companion, a plain woman with no family to claim her. She had buried all the years of learning beneath folded linen and soft answers. Now even the false life was being refused. Silas stepped away from her as if rejection could keep him clean. "I will not be bound to a woman who arrives half-starved and shaking like a leaf. She looks fit for a sick room, not a marriage bed." Reverend Call's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. His wife, standing beneath a parasol, whispered to another woman. Eliza caught only one word: fraud. Her knees weakened. Behind her, the train that had brought her west had already pulled away, leaving a black ribbon of smoke over the far fields. The ticket agent had told her there would not be another eastbound train until Friday, And even then, a ticket cost more than she had left in her pocket. Her last coins, wrapped in a handkerchief, would buy a loaf, perhaps two, if the storekeeper did not refuse credit to a woman publicly unwanted. From the mercantile poor, Mr. Bell, Silas' uncle, lifted his chin. She can sleep in the shed one night, then she moves on. We are not running an orphan house. Eliza's shame burned colder than winter. I do not need your shed, she whispered. But she did. Everyone knew she did. A wagon rattled at the far end of Main Street, its wheels cutting through packed dust. Two horses labored under harness, heads low. The man on the bench held the reins in one hand and pressed the other beneath his coat. At first, no one paid him much attention. Mercy Crossing had made its entertainment of Eliza. But then one wheel struck a rut, the wagon lurched, and the driver swayed so badly a boy shouted. The horses stopped near the water trough. The man dropped the reins, his hat fell first. Then he slid sideways, caught himself against the wagon board, and left a dark smear on the wood. Caleb Wren, someone said. The name moved differently through the crowd. Not with mockery, with caution. Eliza looked up. He was tall, even folded by pain, with sun-browned skin, a beard darkened by frost at the edges, though spring had begun, and a face carved by weather, and something worse than weather. Blood seeped between the fingers pressed to his side. His other sleeve hung torn. A strip of leather had been tied around his upper arm, badly and too tight. Dosey's gone to Red Fork, the liveryman called. Won't be back till night. Caleb Wren tried to step down. His boot missed the wagon iron, and he struck the ground hard. For one suspended breath, no one moved. Eliza did. The veil tore loose as she ran. She dropped to her knees in the dust beside him and set her satchel down. Her hands no longer shook. Not in this. Never in this. Do not sit him up, she said, sharp enough that the nearest man froze. I need clean cloth, hot water, whiskey if there is no carbolic. Reverend, loosen that belt, but do not pull it free. You hold his shoulder still. No one obeyed at first because no one knew what to do with a woman who had been trembling a moment ago and commanding them now. Caleb's eyes opened, gray eyes fever bright. Who are you? He breathed. Eliza pressed her palm above the wound, judging the blood. Someone you need? She opened the satchel. Metal flashed inside. Mrs. Cole gasped. No, dear. Mrs. Cole gasped. Those are doctors' tools. Eliza did not look at her. They are clean tools, and he will bleed to death while you gossip about them. The words struck the street like a shot. Silas stared with his mouth half open. Mr. Bell stepped off the porch. The cattle hands stopped laughing. In the shifting silence, the prairie wind carried one clear sound. Caleb Wren tried not to cry out as Eliza found the torn place below his ribs. She bent close, her borrowed veil dragging in the dirt, and began saving the life of the first person in Mercy Crossing who had not yet had the chance to despise her. The cafe owner, Mrs. Lottie Pike, was the first to move. She came out with a stack of boiled towels and a kettle, her face pale but steady. Tell me what to do. Wash your hands, Eliza said. Then pour slowly when I ask. That was how Eliza Marrow, unwanted bride, fraud, Trembling charity case, took command of Main Street, while the whole town watched the truth slip out of her satchel. Caleb Wren did not remember being carried into the back room of the cafe, but he remembered the woman's voice. Not soft, not sweet, clear. Stay with me, Mr. Wren. He wanted to tell her he had stayed with worse. He had stayed through a blizzard that took 40 head of cattle. He had stayed beside a child's bed until the child stopped breathing. He had stayed in a house after his wife's chair became empty and his daughter's ribbon still hung from a nail by the stove. Staying had never been the hard part. Living afterward had. But pain burned white under his ribs, and his words came out as breath. The woman leaned over him with sleeves rolled past her elbows. Brown hair slipped from its pins. Her eyes were not pretty in the way men bragged about as saloons. They were tired, careful eyes trained to notice too much. He saw fear in them, but not fear of blood. Bullet raised and tore, she said to someone beyond him. Not lodged deep, thank God. He lost blood. He needs rest, broth, and no fool trying to pour whiskey down his throat for courage. Is he dying? Silas Bell asked from the doorway. Eliza did not look away from the wound. Not if everyone who is useless steps outside. Caleb would have laughed if breathing had not felt like being split with an essay. The room smelled of coffee, wet cloth, smoke, and carbolic. Rain tapped faintly at the back window, though sunshine still stood over the street. Spring storms came like that on the prairie, half threat, half promise. When the work was done, Eliza sat back on her heels. Her face had gone gray. One of her hands began trembling again, small and violent, as if it had only waited for permission. She hid it in her skirt. Caleb noticed. So did Reverend Cole. Mrs. Merrow, the Reverend, said carefully. Where did you learn such work? The room tightened around the question. Eliza closed the satchel with both hands, in places where men needed saving. That is not an answer, Mr. Bell said from behind his nephew. It is the only one I owe. Silas stepped forward, recovering some of his pride now that the danger had passed. You misrepresented yourself. Eliza rose slowly. You refused me in front of half the town. I am no concern of yours now. His face reddened. Caleb shifted, pain flashing through him. Bell. The name left his mouth rough, but it carried. Silas turned. Caleb had not spoken much in Mercy Crossing for 2 years. Folks still remembered when his laughter once filled the feed store, when his wife Anna had come in with a baby on her hip and flour on her cheek, when his ranch had supplied half the beef for church suppers. Then fever took Anna, and winter took little Ruth, and Caleb Wren became a man who bought supplies, paid in cash, and left before anyone could invite him to dinner. So when he spoke, the room listened. You sent for her? Silas stiffened. Under false understanding, you brought her here. I brought a bride, not a woman with secrets. Caleb's eyes moved to Eliza. She stood thin and straight in the ruined borrowed dress, dust on her hem, blood on her cuffs, hunger written plainly in the hollows beneath her cheekbones. Secrets, yes, but he has secrets too. Every lonely person did. He looked back at Silas. Then, pay her return fare. Silas barked a laugh. For what? Disappointing me. For coming when called. Mr. Bell stepped forward. Careful, Wren. This is family business. No, Caleb said. It became town business when you shamed her in the street. Eliza turned toward him, startled. Caleb swallowed against pain. Mrs. Pike, Lottie Pike, appeared beside him. You lie still. Put room and meals for Mrs. Merrow on my account. Eliza shook her head at once. No, he looked at her. Then call it wages for what? For keeping me alive until Doc returns. And if Doc says I need nursing after, I will need someone who knows more than prayer and poultices. Silas scoffed. You would bring her to your ranch. Caleb's eyes did not leave Eliza. If she chooses. Those 3 words changed the air. If she chooses. No one had said that to Eliza in a long time. Not the hospital board when they dismissed her after she testified against a surgeon who operated drunk. Not the matron who told her respectable work would never again come under her own name. Not the bride agency that took her last fee and told her to smile smaller, speak less, and never let a man feel inferior. Not Silas Bell, whose letters had praised obedience like it was a virtue and poverty like it was a bargain. Eliza's throat tightened. I will not be purchased. I did not offer to purchase you. I will not be petty. I am not kind enough for pity, Caleb said, and the sadness in that plain truth silenced the room. Outside, thunder rolled low. The rain strengthened, ticking against the cafe roof, darkening the dust in the street. Dr. Hiram Vale returned near sundown in a mud-spattered buggy, smelling of tobacco and wet wool. He was a small, sharp-eyed man with a gray beard and a limp. He examined Caleb, then examined the stitches. He said nothing for several minutes, which made everyone in the cafe lean closer. At last he grunted. Who did this? Eliza stood by the stove, arms folded to hide the stained cuffs. I did. He looked at her over his spectacles. Badly. No, she said before she could stop herself. Cleanly. One corner of his mouth moved. I can see that. A murmur passed through the room. The doctor washed his hands and checked Caleb's pulse. He should not be moved far tonight. Caleb opened one eye. My stock are in the south pasture. Your stock will have to learn patience. There is a mare due to fall. Eliza looked at him sharply. Caleb saw that she understood not just the words, but the worry beneath them. A rancher could lose an animal and lose money. Lose enough animals, and the bank did not care how much grief a man had buried. Dr. Vale sighed. You have help. Caleb gave a humorless breath. Had boy rode off last week, said the house was too quiet. No one smiled. The doctor looked at Eliza. Can you sit with him here tonight? Her pride rose like a wall. I have no arrangement, Mrs. Pike said gently. You have supper in my kitchen, whether you arrange it or not. Eliza's eyes filled, and she turned toward the stove before anyone could see. That night, Mercy Crossing talked. It talked in the mercantile while rain drummed on barrels of beans. It talked in the livery while horses stamped in damp straw. It talked in the church vestibule where Mrs. Cole folded altar cloths with more force than necessary. It talked about the unwanted bride with surgeon's hands. It asked why a woman with such skill would answer a mail-order advertisement. It wondered what disgrace had followed her west. Silas Bell said he had been deceived. His uncle said the town should be careful. A woman who hid one thing could hide worse. Reverend Cole said charity should not require a clean history, but his voice was mild and easily buried. In the cafe kitchen, Eliza ate stew so slowly, Mrs. Pike pretended not to notice. You can sleep upstairs, Lottie said. I will pay. With what? Eliza looked down. Lottie softened. Then pay by helping me peel potatoes when your hands stop shaking. Eliza gave a tired nod. Past midnight, she sat beside Caleb in the back room with a lantern turned low. Rain washed the window. His breathing had steadied. Once fever pulled a name from him. Ruth. Eliza looked up from the mending in her lap. Again, softer. Ruthie, don't go near the creek. The pain in his voice was old and open. It reached into Eliza before she could guard against it. She dipped a cloth in cool water and laid it across his brow. She is not near the creek, she whispered. Rest now, Caleb quieted. Eliza sat very still. She had soothed strangers through battlefield fever, miners through amputations, mothers through births, and children through croup. She knew how the mind returned to the place where it had broken. Her own return to a white hospital ward in St. Louis, to a surgeon's breath sour with liquor, to a young woman on a table, and Eliza's voice saying, Stop, you will kill her. He had not killed the patient, not that one, but he had killed Eliza's career. By morning, the rain had gone east, leaving the town washed and shining. Caleb woke to sunlight on the floor and Eliza asleep upright in a chair, chin tipped to her chest, satchel under one hand. He watched her for a moment. No one who wanted power slept like that, ready to wake at any sound. When she opened her eyes, she startled and stood. How is the pain? Min, good. It means you are alive. That your usual bedside comfort. It has worked so far. He almost smiled. Dr. Vale arrived after breakfast. He checked Caleb, frowned at the idea of the ranch. then frowned harder when Caleb said the mare would fall whether he rested or not. You cannot drive, the doctor said. Caleb looked toward the window where his wagon stood. I can sit, you can bleed. Eliza folded a clean towel. I can drive him. Every eye turned to her. She kept her face composed. If Mr. Wren still wishes to hire me, I will stay until he is past danger and until the mare falls. After that, I will leave. Caleb heard the last sentence for what it was. A fence built before anyone could abandon her again. He nodded. Fair Silas, standing near the cafe counter with his uncle, made a disgusted sound. Convenient. Refused by one man and riding home with another before breakfast. This time Caleb tried to rise. Eliza stepped between them before he tore his stitches. Her voice was low. Mr. Bell, yesterday you said I was not fit for a marriage bed. Today you speak as if I have wronged you by finding employment. Choose one insult and live with it. I have work to do. Mrs. Pike dropped a spoon and laughed before she could hide it. Silas turned crimson. Caleb looked at Eliza's back and felt something shift in him. Not love, not yet, but recognition. A person could tremble and still have iron. He had forgotten that. Or maybe he had never looked closely enough. By 10 o'clock, Eliza Merrill climbed onto Caleb Wren's wagon, with no veil, no groom, and no place in town to call her own. The street watched her go again, but this time she held the reins. Caleb's ranch lay 12 miles north of Mercy Crossing, where the prairie rolled wide and gold beneath a sky too large for secrets. The house appeared first as a dark shape against the grass, then as weathered boards, a stone chimney, and a porch sagging at one corner. Cottonwoods leaned near a creek behind it, their new leaves flashing silver green in the wind. Beyond the house stood a barn with one door off its hinge, a corral, a smokehouse, and fences patched with more hope than lumber. Eliza guided the wagon slowly over ruts, while Caleb sat beside her, pale with pain and stubbornness. You live alone? She asked. Yes. No hired girl? No, ranch hand. Not since last week. She glanced at him. You are either very capable or very foolish. Both, depending on the season. The honesty surprised a small breath of laughter from her. It vanished quickly, but Caleb heard it. At the barn, a chestnut mare shifted in a bed of straw, sides heavy, eyes rolling. Eliza tied the reins and jumped down before he could warn her. Easy, she murmured, approaching with one hand out. Easy, girl. The mare blew, then lowered her head. Caleb watched from the wagon, astonished. She bites strangers. Most creatures do when strangers come loud. I did not. You were thinking loud. He looked at her. And this time he did smile, though pain made it crooked. The house was worse than Eliza expected. Not filthy exactly. Neglected. A place kept alive by habit, but not loved. Dust lay over the mantel. Dishes sat in a basin. A child's carved horse rested on a shelf above the stove, one leg broken and tied with faded blue thread. A woman's shawl hung beside the door, untouched for so long it had become part of the wall. Eliza noticed, Caleb, watching her, notice. I can sleep in the barn, she said. No, I have slept in worse. That is not a recommendation. There is only one bed. I have a cot. You are wounded. I have slept sitting in a saddle. Also, not a recommendation. Their eyes met. Something like amusement passed between them, cautious as a fox at the edge of lamplight. In the end, Caleb took the bed because Eliza threatened to tell Dr. Vale he was deliberately undoing her work, and Eliza took the small room off the kitchen that had once belonged to a child. She stood in the doorway of it after carrying in her satchel. The room held a narrow bed, a quilt with faded red squares, a shelf of 2 books, and a pair of little boots beneath the window. Caleb spoke from behind her. I can move those. No, Eliza said gently. Not tonight. He looked away. That evening she made broth from a hen too old for tenderness, cornmeal cakes from a nearly empty sack, and coffee weak enough to see the bottom of the cup. Caleb apologized for the pantry. Eliza, he said, then stopped as if the name had come too easily. Mrs. Merrill, Eliza is fine if I am being paid to keep you alive. Caleb, then, she nodded. They ate at the kitchen table, while Wynne moved along the eaves. He managed half a bowl. She ate only after he looked down and stopped watching, giving her the dignity of hunger unseen. Later, when he slept, she cleaned, not the child's room, not the shawl. She understood grief too well to tidy what had become sacred. But she scrubbed the stove, swept the floor, boiled cloth, counted jars, and made a list of what was needed. Flour, beans, salt, lamp oil, bandage cloth, oats, sugar if possible. Besides sugar, she wrote my BA. In the barn, the mare labored after midnight. Caleb tried to stand and nearly fell. Eliza put one hand against his chest. No, that mare is worth more than this house. You are worth more than a mare. He stared at her as if the words had struck a hidden wound. She took the lantern and went without waiting. The night was cold and wet from the storm. The barn smelled of hay, damp wood, and animal fear. Caleb made it as far as a stool near the stall despite her orders. Eliza did not waste breath scolding him. She rolled up her sleeves and worked. For 2 hours, the mare strained. The foal was turned wrong. Caleb's jaw tightened as he watched his livelihood slipping toward loss. Can you do anything? He asked once. Eliza's hands moved carefully. Aish, the word was quiet, but it helped. She had delivered babies in rooms where men paced and women screamed. She had turned a breech child under the instruction of a midwife who slapped her hands and called her gifted. A foal was not a child, but life had its own language, and Eliza understood enough. When the foal slid into straw, slick and shivering, Caleb bowed his head. Eliza cleared its mouth, rubbed hard with sacking, and whispered, "Come on now. Do not make a liar of me." The foal jerked, coughed, and breathed. Caleb covered his eyes with one hand. Eliza pretended not to see. By dawn, the foal stood on trembling legs beside its mother. Caleb leaned against the stall, gray with exhaustion. "You saved 2 lives in 2 days," he said. "3, Eliza replied. "If you count yourself, I do." The answer was so solemn that she looked at him. He did not glance away. After that, the days began to shape themselves around work. Eliza rose before sunrise to light the stove. Caleb complained about being ordered back to bed until she asked if he preferred bleeding on his clean floor. He stopped complaining where she could hear. She changed his dressing morning and night. She washed the wound, checked for fever, and tied bandages with neat, firm movements. Sometimes his eyes followed her hands. "You learned in a hospital," he said on the 4th day. She tied a knot. "Yes, that's secret dangerous. To you, me, not to me. You do not know it." He was silent for a moment. Outside, chickens scratched beneath the porch. "Then, I will not ask until you want to tell." Eliza had no answer for that kind of restraint. Mercy Crossing did not forget them. It sent reminders. Mrs. Pike came once with bread and news she pretended was not news. Silas Bell had told anyone who would listen that Eliza had trapped Caleb in gratitude. Mr. Bell had warned the bank that Caleb was taking in a woman of uncertain reputation. Mrs. Cole had formed a charitable sewing circle to discuss whether fallen women could be restored, though no one had asked Eliza if she had fallen. "Folks are fools when they get bored," Lottie said, unpacking bread on the table. "Eat before you argue." Eliza touched the loaf with more emotion than she wanted shown. "Thank you." Lottie looked around the house at the swept floor, the clean curtains, the pot simmering on the stove. "You have done this place good, Caleb." sitting near the window with a blanket over his knees, said, "She has done me good too." The room still. Eliza busied herself with cups. Lottie smiled into the bread knife and said nothing. A week later, a boy arrived at the ranch, leading a mule and carrying a sack of mail. He was 12, freckled and solemn as a judge. "Name's Toby Pike," he announced. "Ma says I'm to help Mr. Wren with chores because he's too stubborn to stay living otherwise." Caleb groaned. "Lottie sent a spy. She sent a son," Toby said. "Worse." Eliza laughed openly then, and the sound startled Caleb more than the boy. It filled the kitchen for a second, bright and human. Toby grinned as if he had accomplished something important. With Toby came noise. He asked questions while hauling water. He named the full button because of a dark spot on its nose. He ate as if famine chased him, and looked at Eliza's medical satchel with reverence. "You a doctor?" he asked. Eliza froze. Caleb set down his cup. "She is the reason I am not under a church stone." "That ain't what I asked, Toby," Caleb warned. Eliza wiped the table slowly. "I trained beside doctors. I was not allowed to be one." "Why not?" "Because I was a woman. And because I told the truth to the wrong man." Toby considered this. "Ma says that happens." Caleb looked at Eliza, but she was watching the table. That evening, after Toby rode home, Caleb found Eliza on the porch. Sunset burned orange across the prairie. She held Ruth's broken wooden horse in her lap. He stopped in the doorway. "I am sorry," she said. "It fell when I dusted the shelf. I was mending the leg." He sat carefully in the chair beside her. "She broke it the day before she got sick. Tried to make it jump off the flour barrel." Eliza tied the blue thread tighter around the repaired leg. "Was she very young?" "5. The number lay between them. My wife Anna died first. Fever after helping a neighbor birth twins. Ruth took sick a month later. By then I had no prayers left that sounded decent." Eliza's fingers slowed. "The town tried to help," he said. "I could not bear it. Every casserole came with eyes. Every hand on my shoulder felt like someone pressing me into the grave with them. So I stayed out here." "Loneliness can feel safer than being watched," Eliza said. Caleb turned to her. "Yes." She looked at the little horse. "In St. Louis, I worked at a women's hospital, not as a doctor. They would not call us that. But I learned. I studied at night. I assisted surgeries, births, fevers, breaks. One surgeon came in drunk. I stopped him from cutting a young mother. He said I had shamed him. The board said I had broken order. After that, every hospital door closed." Caleb's face hardened. "For saving her, for speaking where a woman was meant to obey, and the mail order agency. My savings ran out. Seamstress work did not keep a room. I thought a small-town marriage might be a different kind of cage, but at least one with a stove." She swallowed. "That sounds shameful," spoken aloud. "No," Caleb said. "It sounds hungry." Her eyes shone, but no tears fell. He took the mended horse from her hand and set it on the porch rail. "You can stay as long as you choose. As nurse, housekeeper, doctor, or just Eliza. I will not hand your name over to town talk." She looked at his hand resting inches from hers. Neither moved closer. "Kindness can become another debt," she said. "Then we will keep accounts clear." "How?" "You tell me what wages you are owed. I pay them. You tell me when I overstep. I stop." Such simple terms. Such impossible safety. The prairie wind moved around them, soft with evening grass. For the first time since the train carried her west, Eliza let herself sit without planning where to run next. But Mercy Crossing was not finished with her. Trouble arrived on a Sunday dressed in church clothes. Eliza had gone to town with Caleb because his wound was healing. Supplies were low, and Toby had begged them to come hear him recite a psalm. Caleb drove, though Eliza kept one eye on the reins and one on his collar. The wagon carried eggs to sell, a list for the mercantile, and a basket of clean bandages for Dr. Vale, who had begun sending small requests through Lottie Pike. The church bell rang bright over Mercy Crossing. Women in pale dresses turned as the Wren wagon came down Main Street. Men stopped talking. Children stared at Eliza, but now their curiosity held wonder as well as gossip. Word had spread of the fall. Word had spread that Caleb Wren's house had smoke in the chimney every morning and curtains washed clean. Silas Bell stood outside the church with his uncle. Eliza felt her body remember the steps, the veil, the laughter. Her hands trembled in her lap. Caleb saw. "We can go home." "No," she said. Toby recited all week. He nodded and helped her down in front of everyone, not as if she were weak, but as if she were someone whose dignity mattered. That was worse somehow. It made her want to weep. Inside, the pews smelled of pine soap and damp wool. Caleb sat beside her in the back. During the hymn, his shoulder brushed hers once. Neither moved away. Toby forgot 2 lines of his psalm, invented one, and finished red-faced to his mother's proud tears. Eliza smiled so warmly he stood taller. Then Reverend Cole announced a charity collection for a widow whose roof had failed east of town. Eliza opened her purse. She had 3 coins. 2 were Caleb's advance for wages. 1 was her own. She placed her own coin in the plate. Mrs. Cole saw. Her face softened, then tightened, as if compassion had lost a battle to caution. After service, the congregation spilled into sunlight. Eliza was nearly to the wagon when Mr. Bell stepped in front of her. "Mrs. Merrill," he said loudly enough for others to hear, "my nephew has decided not to press formal complaint against you." Caleb's hand tightened on the feed sack. Eliza lifted her chin. "How generous!" Mr. Bell's smile was thin. "A decent woman would be grateful. A decent man would be ashamed to speak of complaint after public cruelty." Silas stepped forward. "You lied about what you were." Eliza's heart hammered. People gathered. The old fear returned. Men in black coats, a boardroom, a closed door. Silas pointed toward Caleb. "You think hiding at his ranch makes you respectable? A woman alone with a widower." Caleb moved then, but Eliza touched his arm. "Just once. Wait." She faced Silas. "You did not want me when you thought I was poor and frightened. You want power over me now because you found out I was useful." A murmur went through the crowd. Silas' mouth twisted. "Useful women still need a name. What are you? Nurse? Doctor? Bride? Widow? Or just whatever keeps you fed?" The words struck hard because they found old bruises. Eliza's vision blurred. She could feel the town judging, weighing, waiting. Accept help and be called kept. Refuse help and starve. Speak and be immodest. Stay silent and be guilty. Then a horse screamed near the livery. A black gelding reared at the hitching post, tangled in a broken trace. A little girl, no more than 6, stood frozen beside a wagon wheel, directly in the path of the animal's striking hooves. Her mother screamed. Caleb lunged, but his wound caught him. Eliza dropped her purse and ran. "Do not move," she shouted to the child. The gelding came down, hoof glancing off the wagon, splintering wood. Eliza swept the girl sideways and took the fall hard against the dirt. The child cried once, then went limp. The mother sobbed, reaching. "Give her room," Eliza ordered. This time, Mercy Crossing moved faster. Caleb caught the horse's bridle with the liveryman. Toby ran for Dr. Vale. Eliza knelt over the child, fingers at her throat, then along her arm. The girl's eyes fluttered. "Sarah," the mother wept. "Sarah, baby." Eliza's voice softened. "She is breathing. Arm is broken. Might be collarbone. No head wound I can find. Mrs. Pike, bring a board. Reverend, your scarf. Doctor, I need you." Dr. Vale knelt beside her without hesitation. "Tell me." She looked at him, startled. He held her gaze. "Tell me what you see." In front of the whole town, a licensed doctor asked the unwanted woman for her judgment. Eliza steadied. "Left forearm fracture. Clean, I think." She fainted from fear and pain. We should splint before moving. Agreed. Together they worked. Dr. Vale did not take over. He assisted. He let everyone see. When Sarah was carried to the doctor's office, her mother caught Eliza's bloodied hand. "Thank you." Eliza nodded, unable to speak. Silas Bell stood forgotten near the church fence. But Mr. Bell was not a man who enjoyed being forgotten. By Monday, a new kind of pressure began. At the mercantile, Caleb's account was refused. "Temporary," Mr. Bell said, smoothing his ledger. "Bank concerns, supply concerns. A man recovering from injury, taking on extra mouths, uncertain labor. Credit requires confidence." Caleb's face went still. "I have paid every bill." In the past, Eliza stood beside the flour sacks, hearing the hidden words. Because of her, because she had made Caleb defend her, because the town could not punish a woman without punishing the man who gave her shelter. Caleb placed cash on the counter. Flour, beans, salt, oats, lamp oil. Mr. Bell counted slowly. "Not enough for all." Then removed the sugar. Eliza looked down. Sugar had been for Toby's birthday cake. Caleb had noticed the boys longing in Lottie's kitchen and said nothing, only added it to the list. She stepped forward. "Chayanga and Mishimao," Caleb said. "Eyes, no." The word was not loud, but it was final. Mr. Bell smiled. A proud arrangement for a woman in paid service. She. Caleb leaned both hands on the counter. His voice stayed quiet. "You will sell me what my money buys. You will not speak of her." Mr. Bell wrapped the goods with insulting slowness. Outside, Eliza stood by the wagon, cheeks burning. "You should let me leave." Caleb loaded the sacks. "Is that what you choose?" "It is what keeps your account open." I asked what you choose." She hated him a little for making dignity so costly. "I choose not to ruin you," she said. His expression changed. "Ruin came to my house before you did." "Caleb." "No, listen." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the town could not own the words. "For 2 years, I let people call me strong, because I did not ask for anything. Truth is, I was dying quiet. You came with blood on your cuffs and hunger in your eyes, and my house remembered it was a house. If that cost me credit at Bell's store, then Bell's store was too expensive." She looked away, tears threatening. He added, "Chandler, do not pay for another man's cruelty by disappearing." That night, a hard wind came from the north. Clouds covered the moon. The temperature dropped mean and sudden, as spring on the prairie often did. Caleb's wound ached. The mare grew restless. Toby, who had stayed to help mend fence, slept on a pallet by the stove after Lottie sent word. The creek was rising, and he should not ride home in the dark. Near midnight, a pounding came at the door. Caleb reached for the rifle. Eliza lifted the lantern. Dr. Vale stood on the porch soaked through, with Reverend Cole behind him and a wagon in the yard. "It is Mrs. Bell," the doctor said. "Silas aunt, fever and a bad birth. Baby turn. She is bleeding. I need hands." Eliza went cold. Mr. Bell's wife, the woman who had watched from the mercantile porch, and said nothing while Eliza was humiliated. The wife of the man who cut Caleb's credit. Family to Silas, who would rather see Eliza ruined than respected. Dr. Vale saw her hesitation. "I would not ask if there were time." Caleb rose too fast and caught the chair. "I am coming." "You are not," Eliza said. "If you go there alone." "I have been alone before. That is what I fear." Their eyes held in lantern light. Toby sat up, frightened. "Miss Eliza," she turned to him and softened. "Keep the fire up. Make Mr. Wren sit if he gets pale." Caleb caught her hand before she could pass. It was the first time he had taken it. His fingers were warm, calloused. "Careful. You owe them nothing," he said. "I know." "Then why?" She looked toward the rain, toward the wagon, toward the dock road back to Mercy Crossing. Because the baby owes me nothing either, he released her slowly. Eliza rode with Dr. Vale through wind that slapped rain sideways against her face. By the time they reached the Bell house behind the Mercantile, the lamps were blazing. Mrs. Bell's cries had weakened. Silas stood in the hall, white-faced. Mr. Bell blocked the bedroom door. "No," he said when he saw Eliza. Dr. Vale pushed past him. "Then buried 2 people by morning." Mr. Bell moved. The room smelled of blood, sweat, and fear. Mrs. Bell lay twisted in soap sheets, her hair plastered to her temples. She was not old, but pain had aged her. Her eyes found Eliza and filled with shame. "I heard what they said," she whispered. "I did not stop them." Eliza washed her hands. "Save your breath for hours." The world narrowed to the bed. The storm. Dr. Vale's instructions. Eliza's hands. The baby was turned badly. Mrs. Bell was exhausted. Twice Dr. Vale muttered that they might lose one. Eliza refused to hear it. "Look at me," she told Mrs. Bell. "You are not done." "I cannot." "You can. You hate us." "I am angry." "That is different. Now breathe." At dawn, a baby boy cried, thin and furious into the gray light. Mrs. Bell lived. Eliza sat down hard in a chair, shaking so violently she could barely hold the towel around the baby. Dr. Vale took him gently. "You did well," he said. She closed her eyes. So did she. In the hall, Mr. Bell waited like a man at sentencing. His face crumpled when he heard the child cry. He started toward the room, then stopped before Eliza. For a moment, pride fought gratitude in him. Gratitude won, but barely. "I misjudged you," he said. Eliza was too tired for politeness. "You harmed me." His eyes lowered. "You harmed Mr. Wren to punish me." "Yes." Silas stood near the stairs, unable to meet her gaze. Eliza took her coat from the peg. "Your wife needs broth, clean sheets, and no visitors. The baby should nurse as soon as she wakes. Dr. Vale will tell you the rest." Mr. Bell swallowed. "What do I owe you?" The question filled the hall. Silas looked up. Eliza thought of the church steps, the shed offer, like charity, the laughter, the credit refused. She thought of Caleb's pantry, the sugar removed from the lists, Toby's hopeful face. She could ask enough to leave, enough for a train ticket, a room in another town, a new name. Instead, she said, "Restore Mr. Wren's account publicly. Deliver the flour, oats, sugar, lamp oil, and bandage cloth he could not buy yesterday. Pay Dr. Vale for my share of the work. And when your nephew speaks of me again, teach him silence." Mr. Bell stared. "I asked that all?" he asked. "No," Eliza said. "Tell your wife the truth when she wakes. Tell her she lived because no one in that room had time for pride." She walked out before he could answer. Caleb was waiting on the Bell porch. He had come despite orders. He stood pale beneath his hat, one hand braced against the post, rain dripping from his coat. Behind him, Toby held the reins of the Wren wagon, looking guilty and proud. Eliza stopped. "You should be in bed. You should have had someone waiting." Her strength broke then, not loudly. Her mouth trembled. She looked down at her blood-stained sleeves and the rainwater dripping from her hem. Caleb stepped close enough to shield her from the street. "Did she live? Did she live?" "Asa. The baby." "Ah, yes," he exhaled. Eliza whispered, "I am so tired. I know. I did not do it for them. I know. I wanted to hate them enough to refuse." He nodded. "But you are not them." That was the thing that undid her. Tears spilled, silent and hot. Caleb did not pull her into an embrace in front of the town. He knew her pride better than that. He simply offered his arm. She took it. Together they walked to the wagon. while Mercy, crossing, watched a different kind of scene from the one it had enjoyed weeks before. This time, no one laughed. By afternoon, Belle's delivery wagon arrived at Caleb's ranch loaded with supplies: flour, beans, oats, lamp oil, bandage cloth, coffee, sugar, a bolt of plain blue fabric, and, wrapped separately, a small envelope with Eliza's name written across it. Inside were wages, not charity. Wages. Dr. Vale had signed the note. Mr. Bell had added 2 words beneath, with apology. Eliza read them at the kitchen table while Caleb stood by the stove, pretending to adjust the fire. Toby leaned over her. "How much?" "Toby," Caleb warned. The boy grinned. "Enough for cake?" Eliza looked at the sugar, then at the boy, and for once let joy answer before caution. "Enough for cake." The next weeks did not turn easy. Earned endings never do. Caleb's wound reopened slightly after he overworked himself during a fence repair, and Eliza scolded him with such fierce worry that Toby laughed until she pointed the spoon at him too. The bank sent a man to inspect the ranch books. A late frost killed half the early garden. 2 calves were lost in a cold rain. Eliza spent one entire night beside Mrs. Bell when fever returned. And by morning the woman clasped her hand and wept without asking forgiveness aloud. Silas avoided Eliza until the day Sarah, the little girl with the broken arm, ran across Main Street to show Eliza how well her fingers moved. Half the town saw Eliza kneel in the dust and praised the child's courage. Silas watched from the mercantile doorway. Later, he approached Caleb near the hitching rail. "I spoke wrong," Silas said. Caleb tied a sack. "You spoke cruel," Silas swallowed. "Yes, you are telling the wrong person." Silas looked toward Eliza, who stood outside Dr. Vale's office discussing bandages with Lottie Pike. "She will not hear me, then become the sort of man she might one day believe." It was not forgiveness, but it was a road. Dr. Vale began asking Eliza to assist openly. At first the town came because they had no choice. A cut hand, a fevered child, a rancher kicked by a mule. Then women came because they preferred her careful voice. Mothers brought babies. Old men brought coughs and pretended they had only stopped to ask about Caleb's cattle. Eliza kept accounts in a small ledger, charging those who could pay and accepting eggs, salt, mending, or nothing from those who could not. One morning, Reverend Cole visited the ranch. Caleb was in the corral with Toby. Eliza found the Reverend on the porch, hat in hand. "The church board is willing to let the side room be used twice weekly," he said, "for nursing work. If you want." Eliza stood still. The Reverend looked ashamed. "We should have spoken sooner." "I should have spoken sooner. Eliza said. He accepted it. "Will you consider?" She looked past him toward the prairie, where Caleb was teaching Toby to set a post straight. The house behind her smelled of bread and coffee. Ruth's wooden horse, mended, stood on the mantel now, not hidden but honored. Anna's shawl had been washed and folded into a cedar chest by Caleb's own hands one quiet Sunday, while Eliza sat nearby and said nothing, because some grief needed witness, not advice. "I will consider," she said. That evening Caleb found her beside the creek. Summer had come soft over the prairie. Cottonwood leaves whispered overhead. The fall button bucked in the pasture, foolish with strength. The sky held pink light, and the first stars waited behind it. "You are thinking of leaving," Caleb said. Eliza did not deny it. "I have enough money now. Yes, I could go west or back east under another name. Somewhere no one saw me on those church steps." He stood beside her, leaving space. "I asked that what you want." She looked at him. Sometimes the honesty hurt him. She saw it, but he did not turn away. "Sometimes I want to be where no one remembers my shame," she continued. "And sometimes I think if I leave, shame wins." "What do you need from me?" The question was not what she expected. Not stay. Not I need you. Not after all I have done. Just what do you need? Her eyes fill. Time. You have it. And truth. You have that too. She turned to him fully. Do you want me here because I made your house less empty? Yes, he said. Her breath caught. He stepped closer, careful as always. But not only that. I want you here because when you are in a room, people become more alive. Toby stands taller. Lottie rests. Dr. Vale argues less, which is a miracle beyond scripture. That mare lets you touch her full. And I wake up wanting to be the kind of man whose roof feels safe above your head. Eliza pressed her lips together, tears slipping free. I love you, Caleb said simply, not because you saved me, not because you stayed, because you choose mercy when pride would be easier, and because your hands shake after danger, not before it. I will not ask you in town. I will not make a spectacle. But if someday you want my name, my porch, my table, or only my hand beside yours, they are yours to choose. For a long moment, the creek spoke for them. Then Eliza reached out, not all the way, just enough that her fingers touched his. I love you too, she whispered, as if saying it louder might frighten the future. But I do not want to be rescued into another cage. Caleb closed his hand gently around hers. Then we build a door that opens both ways. She laughed through tears. 2 Sundays later, Mercy Crossing gathered in the church not for a wedding, though many expected one, but for announcement. Eliza stood at the front beside Dr. Vale, wearing the plain blue dress made from Mr. Bell's delivered fabric. Her hands trembled, but she did not hide them. Caleb sat in the front pew with Toby and Lottie Pike. Mrs. Bell sat near the aisle with her baby in her arms. Silas stood in the back. Reverend Cole cleared his throat. The side room of this church will be opened as a nursing room on Tuesdays and Fridays, under the care of Mrs. Eliza Marrow, assisting Dr. Vale and serving any family in need. Whispers moved, then settled. Dr. Vale stepped forward. Tishun, I have worked beside doctors with half her skill and twice her pride. Mercy Crossing is fortunate. Eliza looked down quickly. Then Mrs. Bell rose. Her face was pale, but her voice carried. My son and I are alive because of her. My family wronged her. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I will not stay quiet now. The baby fussed somewhere behind Eliza. A woman sniffed. Lottie Pike stood next. My Toby says Miss Eliza makes the best sugar cake in the county. And while that is not medical testimony, it ought to count. Laughter broke the tension, warm and relieved. One by one, not all, but enough. People stood. Sarah's mother, the livery man, a ranch wife whose fever had broken under Eliza's care. Reverend Cole's wife, with tears in her eyes and an apology waiting in them. Silas did not stand at first. Then slowly, he removed his hat. I was cruel, he said from the back. His voice shook. I wanted a wife I could feel above. When she proved better than me, I tried to drag her lower. I am sorry, Mrs. Merrill. Eliza looked at him for a long moment. I hear you, she said. It was not forgiveness, not yet. But it was more than silence. After church, the town spilled into sunlight. No one crowded Eliza. Perhaps they had finally learned that honor did not require pressing close. Caleb waited near the steps, hat in hand, while she spoke with Dr. Vale. When she turned, she saw him standing where Silas had once rejected her. The memory passed through her body. The borrowed veil, the laughter, the hunger, the impossible wish to vanish. Caleb held out his hand. Not his arm for support, not money, not shelter. His hand opened before the whole town. Eliza looked at it. Then she looked at Mercy Crossing. People were watching again, but this time she was not alone beneath their gaze. Mrs. Pike smiled from the cafe porch. Toby bounced on his heels. Mrs. Bell held her baby close. Dr. Vale pretended to be interested in his watch. Eliza placed her hand in Caleb's. The town saw Caleb did not lift it high or make a speech. He simply held her hand as if it belonged there, as if no shame in the world could make him let go. They walked down the church steps together. At the mercantile, Mr. Bell came out with a paper sack. He looked awkward and older than before. "Sugar," he said, "for the nursing room. Children behave better with peppermint." Eliza accepted the sack. "I will pay." "It is paid." She raised an eyebrow. He sighed. "Fine. Put it on my account." That made Caleb chuckle, and after a second, Eliza did too. By late afternoon, they returned to the ranch with Toby riding behind, and Button racing along the fence as if announcing them home. The kitchen filled with lamplight. Lottie had sent a pie. Caleb brought in wood. Toby set plates without being asked. Eliza hung her blue bonnet by the door, beneath the place where Anna's shawl had once hung, and stood for a moment, listening. There was wind in the grass, a horse shifting in the barn, a boy humming off-key, a man moving carefully because he had promised not to tear his stitches again, though the stitches were long-heeled, a house breathing around her. Caleb came to stand beside her. "Too much noise," she shook her head. "Just enough." After supper, Toby fell asleep by the stove with Button's dark nose visible through the open window. Caleb carried the boy to the cot and returned to find Eliza on the porch. The stars had come clear. Mercy Crossing glowed faintly in the distance, a handful of lanterns against the dark. Once, that town had been the place of her deepest humiliation. Now it held a room where women would bring their children, where men would remove hats and ask for help, where her name would be spoken, not as scandal, but as shelter. Caleb stood beside her, their shoulders touching. "I have been thinking," Eliza said. "That sounds expensive." She smiled. "The nursing room needs shelves. I can build shelves. And a lock for medicines. I can fit a lock, and I might need to ride out at night when babies decide to arrive inconveniently. I have a gentle mare." She turned to him. "You would not mind?" "I will mind every storm, every dark road, every fool who waits too long to call. But I will not stop you." Eliza took that in. Freedom, she was learning, did not always feel like walking away. Sometimes it felt like staying where the door could open, and no one blocked it. Caleb reached into his vest pocket and took out Ruth's mended wooden horse. The blue thread had been replaced with a fine leather binding. "I found this on the floor that first week," he said. "You fixed what I had been afraid to touch." Eliza closed her fingers around the little horse. He added, "I am not asking tonight. Not properly. I know you need time, but someday, if you choose, I would like to put a new name beside yours. Not over it, beside it." Her heart ached with the tenderness of that. "Eliza Merrill Wren," she asked softly. "If you like, Dr. Merrill Wren sounds better." Caleb's smile came slow. "Then that is what it will be." She laughed, and this time there was no fear in the sound. Down by the barn, the mare nickered. The prairie wind moved warm over the porch. In the kitchen, the lamp burned steady, laying gold across the scrub table, the clean cups, the pie cooling beneath a cloth. The life they had not found easily, but had chosen piece by piece. Eliza slipped her hand into Caleb's. No church steps, no borrowed veil, no laughter cutting her down. Just a woman who had once been unwanted standing in the open, beside a man who had once believed his heart buried. Their hands joined where anyone could see. And when the first cool breath of night came across the prairie, Caleb drew her hand gently against his chest, and Eliza did not pull away. At last she had not been hidden, bought, pitied, or claimed. She had been seen. She had been chosen. And in the warm square of light spilling from the ranch house door, she chose him back.